So Easy Drummer, honestly, I don't use that often. Logic Drummer is really my go-to, but Easy Drummer is great when you need drums and you don't want to leave Ableton because it is actually a plugin that runs in Ableton. Whereas,
Right.
Logic I have to go to a whole different application to get the drums. That is a drag about Logic Drummer, but I was telling Zach that I spend 5 minutes in Logic getting drums together, and that speed is worth it to me to deal with the hassle of going to a whole other DAW that I honestly don't even know how to use. Yeah, Ableton is really what I know, and Logic, I just know that one plugin.
Yeah, it
So
seems
yeah,
crazy. The generative stuff that it can do just seems unmatched.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I will definitely show that to you. Okay, so I just put a basic beat together on this top track here. Um, and so here's Easy Drummer. So you've got, I mean, honestly, it's almost a dizzying amount of options, but you've got all these different kits here. And then within each kit are different mixes of each kit. So, like, for example, so here's what kind of oops, this is sort of their basic mix of this modern kit, basically. So, but they've done a ton of different mixes of this kit. So, like, here's the 80s version of that kit. Here's the metal version. And then they've got, this is the easy drum. This is the third version, I guess, of Easy Drummer. So they added even more kits. So you can hear you've got a whole different range of kind of tonalities and kind of how much this is like the super dry version of. Yeah, so it's all over the place depending upon what sound you are going for. But as you can see, you could dial up a kit pretty quickly. It takes a little bit of browsing, but the descriptions are reasonable. So that's how you browse through your kits. But then you've got the Groove browser. So you can say, all right, I want pop or rock, a standard groove straight as opposed to with swing or a fill, or I mean with swing. I want a basic beat. I want 4/4 and closed hi hat. So then it brings up all these grooves here. So then you can audition them here.
So now, did you just start with an empty MIDI track and this is like loading the plugin from scratch, or did you have something in there already?
I had put one of these grooves on this MIDI track so that I could audition those sounds for you.
I
But
see.
for the most part, it's basically a new track.
So once you select a groove in Easy Drummer, does that MIDI populate in the Ableton track?
No, it does not. I'll show you. So what happens? So you audition your grooves here. So let's say, okay, so let's say I like this groove. Oops. Sorry. Okay, so let's say this MIDI track, this blue thing, is completely blank, which it is now. So let's say I like this. So what I can do is drag right from here onto my MIDI track, and then now the MIDI is here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's their entire groove there.
Okay. So what you're hearing, it depends on whether you press the play button within the Easy Drummer UI or whether you press space in
That
Ableton.
is correct, which can be, as you probably saw a second there, it can be a little bit of a nightmare if you hit play in the wrong place. And sometimes I've got this going, and then sometimes I've got this going at the same time, and I've got two beats flamming together. Anyway,
Some
but
crazy syncopation. You're like, that's perfect. How do I
yeah,
capture it?
yeah, exactly. So, but another thing you can do is, let's say you've got music going, other instruments going in your track. If you hit follow host, and then I play Ableton, it'll start playing whatever beat I've got down here. So the Easy Drummer kind of has its own little timeline down here. So then I can audition against my music if I want to, play it alongside stuff without dragging into my MIDI track. So let's say, so since I have the, let me turn that off. So I've got this beat that I picked. Why is that not working? Oh, because I muted it. Okay, so I've got that. And then the other thing you can do is say, okay, now I don't want a beat. I want a straight fill. So now you've got fills that it's brought up. Oh, blah. See, I just did it again. Okay. Stop. Okay, so let's say I like this fill. Now I can, whoops. I just messed that up. Hold on.
The imposter syndrome in me is already thinking, oh no, they're going to know it's Easy Drummer fill number 4.
Okay, so let's say I've got a beat here. Oh, no wonder. Okay. Okay, so now I clear this, find a straight fill. Okay, so let's say I like this fill. I could say drop this on the 4th bar. And maybe I like this fill. Drop this on the 8th bar. So now I've got
Do you find that you arrange more within the Easy Drummer plugin, or that you pull it into Ableton?
Um, I, I don't use this plugin a lot, but I prefer, since I'm used to dealing with MIDI in Ableton, I would do that.
Mhm.
Because I honestly, this whole other, Zach and I were just talking about this, like having to deal with yet a different interface when my brain is used to dealing with Ableton's interface, I'd just rather do that. Um, so, okay, so that's one way to deal with, to find grooves. But the other thing you can do is you can do this tap to find thing. So let's say you go here and this click starts and you program in a basic little beat. And then you hit search, and now it's not generated, but it searched its library of beats to find beats that kind of go with that rhythm. And the other thing you can do is you can hit search fills, and it'll find fills that will go with that rhythm. So if you have like a basic beat in mind, it will narrow the search based on the beat you give it.
What was I missed where you tacked on the fill? You said
Oh,
it searches fills then,
oh
basically.
yeah. So when I was in this interface, this
Uh-huh.
basic beat that I programmed, if I right here, it says search fills,
Oh, okay.
then it brings up this. Now this search it did is all fills basically.
Interesting, but somehow fills that are specifically good for that type of beat.
That's what it's trying to do. Exactly. Yeah. Like the lead in part of the fill might sort of match that beat.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of the groove, search engine, if you will. Then they've got this grid editor, which honestly I've never used, but again, a whole other interface that I don't really want to deal with. But I imagine it's like a step sequencer. Um, then this section is the mixer, where you can change relative volumes of your different drums, but also there's usually kind of the room noise. You can, change kind of the ambience on it. So anyway, so yeah, so you have some control over the mix of the drums within here. But
And when you
then
select the mix presets in the top right, do those faders change?
I don't think so. I think they have zeroed them all out to sound good, and then you
Okay.
can go from there to adjust.
Okay.
Yeah. Then they've got this feature called Bandmate, where you essentially give it an audio or a MIDI file, and then it attempts, and it doesn't have to be drums. It can be, as it says here, guitar, bass, or keys, or whatever. And then it attempts to also narrow its search based on what you give it. So, for example, uh, this is just a basic drum beat. So the basic beat I generated sounds like this. So what it did is it found this. And then from here, you can say, okay, that's good, but I want the snares more complex, a more complicated beat. And I want the kick a little busier. And I want the hi-hat a little less busy. So this is not totally different from what Logic is doing. But I think what this is doing is using one of its presets as a starting point. So I can switch to a different preset. Let's see. Let's see. So basically using one of their presets as a starting point, you basically can change the complexity, and it, uses its smarts to, add little extra hits and grace notes and whatnot.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
then,
feel that that's so intuitive. That's a really intuitive way. If you're in a workflow
yeah,
and you just need a beat, and then you're even as a drummer, right? I've been drumming for like 15 years.
yeah,
The first thing you think of is like, oh, it's too much or not enough, like or it's too busy
absolutely.
or not busy enough, and then your brain moves on from there to get more specific. But that's super intuitive. Just turn it up, turn it
Absolutely,
down.
absolutely. Yeah, I got to say, I only discovered this bandmate thing really today, and I realized, like, yeah, actually, I could see using this a lot more. So once you have, let's say, I like this beat, now I can basically drag right from here, and it'll drop a MIDI file on my track. So the only thing I feel that's missing from this part of the interface, which would be nice, is if it also generated fills somehow for you. But I think you've got to then go back here and do your search for fills.
And when you put something in there for it to generate off of, do you
Mhm.
have to do it in the like upload, the drag and drop into that window, or can it just detect something from your Ableton session?
As far as I know, you have to, let me get rid of this. Yeah, it says drag audio or MIDI here. So I
Yeah.
assume those are the only options. Yeah, I don't think it's smart enough to say, let me listen to another track in my DAW.
Can you drag it from your DAW? Can you drag audio or MIDI from Ableton right there into this?
That's a really good question. Guess not.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was picking up on a video I was watching about this earlier, which seems to
Yeah.
be a difference compared to Logic Drummer.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an extra step, but I guess you could right click here and then say export MIDI, and then go here and then select file and then go browse for it. Which is not the end of the world, but it would be nice if you could do it staying within Ableton.
I'll also
Um,
say you can drag, I think, from Ableton to like your desktop or to a folder on your computer.
okay.
Really, and that's a little makes that a little bit less clicking around.
Oh, okay.
You can
Like,
drag it back into Easy
oh,
Drum.
okay. Okay. I don't think I knew that. Nice. Okay. This is the same file I'd imported in Easy Drummer, but I basically just made this very basic beat, and then I exported it as audio. So now we're in Logic. So here it is. I just looped it, set the same tempo. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is go here and say new session player, drummer, and I'm going to say funk rock. So then right away it creates this beat here. So that's not following anything. So if I go down here though and say follow that drum track, now it'll revise what it. So then what you can do is, so you've got this complexity slider and this intensity slider. Oh, well, first of all, you can always change the kit, basically. But let's say I want this, I like this beat, but I want it simpler. So just slide this down. Let's say I want it crazy busy.
That's the point where you yell over to the drummer, like, take it easy.
Yeah.
Leave some room for everybody.
Dude, chill the fuck out. You're trying too hard. And then this slider is basically, as far as I can tell, this is basically like, how hard is the dude hitting the drums? So bring it way down. Kind of a softer beat. So then what you can do is, so it's already just generated this, and you could just say, okay, I love it, and use it. Or if you wanted to, you can click here. These are the different hi-hat options it's given you. So like basically, generally, I think 1 is going to be more simple and 4 is going to be more complex. So let's say I wanted a simpler hi-hat pattern. And then similarly, there are these basic kick and snare patterns. So I just pick the next one. And then from here, I can still increase or decrease the complexity. And then this knob basically is how often does it play fills. And I think at like a medium level, the fills are more or less in the 4th bar and the 8th bar. You know, as you turn the thing up, it starts putting little fills in at every 2 bars, basically. And this is like how complex a fill do you want. So let's say this is fairly simple. Probably just be on here on the 4th measure. And usually the one in the 8th bar is a little more complicated. Or if you want like really big ass complicated fills. And then here, if you want, I honestly never mess with this stuff, but basically this is just, you know, more detailed control over the feel and the sound. And here you can sort of like in Easy Drummer, you can put in a basic pattern for it to follow. But what I don't like about this is if you put something in here, I think it kind of locks to that. Like this, I think the complexity slider kind of doesn't do anything anymore. So I feel like making it follow something you've already got as a starting point is more productive. So then let me just show you. So let's say you want a hard rock kit. Or let's see, a retro rock kit. And then interestingly, you can see the style kind of changes as well, even though it's still technically following my basic rhythm. Like that hard rock pattern was a lot more busy than the retro rock one, for example. Like there are certain styles built into each kit.
Is there because I see there above retro rock, it says acoustic drummer. Does that title ever change if you go to like a electronic EDM type of?
Yeah, so that's another difference. So Easy Drummer really is just straight up acoustic drums, but Logic Drummer has electronic kind of drum sounds in here. So actually, let me show you. So if I just create another one and switch this to one of the electronic drummers,
Hmm.
and then tell this to follow my beat, mute this one. And then so the options change. You can take out the clap if you want. Take it down, just kick drum. Add these weird percussion things.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's this plugin. It's just immediate gratification. Yeah, and then similarly, you can up or lower the complexity. And then also, there are a bunch of different electronic drum kits as well. So what I like to do, I think Cam, you had asked about this a while ago, but one thing I like to do is layer the electronic drums with the acoustic drums, and you just get a kind of somewhere in the middle sort of sound. So that's something I do a lot, so that it's still drum machiney, but maybe there's a little bit of a live feel to it.
When you dragged in when you put in the EDM drummer, is it following something, or is that just default?
I told it to follow that basic drum pattern that I had imported up here. Yeah, but I could tell it, okay, don't follow anything, and now it'll just sort of do what it thinks is a good. So it's kind of a more straight up 4-on-the-floor beat it comes up with.
So using Logic Drummer, you're not at any point going through a folder of MIDI grooves.
Correct. It's completely based on the style you pick here, complexity, and then you can mess with other faders and with knobs and whatnot to dial in what you want.
To me, I don't know how you feel, Zach, but to me that seems so fun. Like this seems kind of more fun to me. Like my feeling is that I want to dive into it and play around with it.
It's so fun.
Yeah. I kind of wonder though, when you click on the actual patterns, and it looks like you can kind of program your own, or if you click there, or to me that is like a MIDI pattern. It's just presented a little more artistically. But it definitely looks more like a toy where you're just kind of playing with it, which seems like it keep you in the groove, keep you in the zone a little more.
So
Apple is so great. Apple is so great at like minimal artistic user interfaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing I'll do is, I'll let's say I like this pattern, but I don't want just this one pattern for my entire song. So what I can do is I can duplicate this, go over here. Let's say I want this version just to be without just kick drum, say, without the percussion. So I've got that version. I've got this version. So I just create a bunch of different variations, and then I export all of it as audio and then bring it back into Ableton. So I just have every option I can think of.
And when you export the audio, are they merged, or are they separate files for each?
You can choose. Or I see what you're saying. You can't. Actually, that's a really good question. I don't think you can split them out without some effort. I think you can. I think you could literally disable everything here and say,
I would just want the kick if I needed a side chain or something.
So you could do kick and then turn everything else on and then just bounce it twice. So yeah, there's a little bit extra effort doing that.
I'm surprised DAWs haven't implemented that, because Ableton doesn't do that either. When you have a MIDI like drum beat going, there's not an easy way to export it into audio for the individual instruments.
Right.
You have to kind of, there's like a little, I was just exploring that the other day. It's kind
yeah.
of,
You can extract chains though. That's not too bad. And then you can just export each of those chains as its own.
Yeah. But you would think it wouldn't be that difficult to program, like, so you can just have a button
Right.
that does it automatically for you.
Right. It's because you could just probably say, okay, export the audio that comes from C1, which is triggering the kick drum. Right.
Yeah.
You would think. I don't know. I'm no programmer, but
is that audio clips in the arrangement there?
These yellow things?
Yeah.
In here. I think it's Apple's or Logic's own weird representation of what drummer is doing. It's not actually audio.
Is there, if you want to fine tune it, can you go into the MIDI kind of and adjust things more?
You cannot.
You cannot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this, I know sometimes because Logic has, what is it called? Drum Designer or something, which is, it's kind of, actual more manual.
Yeah.
Drum engine have you used that with Logic Drummer, using Logic Drummer as the player who generates the MIDI and then going into Drum Designer to actually adjust the different samples and things like that?
I could be wrong, but I think, and again, I'm no Logic expert. I really just know this one instrument, but I think that Drummer is its own little world with its own little presets.
I thought I've seen people using it in that way, the way I just described. Where
oh, really? Okay, then I could be wrong. Yeah, I wonder if there's. Oh, interesting. There's convert to MIDI region. Oh, look at that.
Well, can you just drag, like, because that's an instrument track kind of, right? And then can you drag onto that the Drum Designer plugin?
Yeah, if I knew how to do that.
I think that's what they did.
It's so funny. I really barely know how to use Logic. Yeah, theoretically, that would make sense.
I can see how going, back and forth to Ableton would be like, this is something I would want to play with while my track is playing.
Right.
And it seems frustrating that you wouldn't be able to do that.
So one thing I have done is I will come up with a track with drums that are all living within Ableton and then decide, you know what, I really want drums from Logic. So I'll export a stem of everything minus drums, put it into Logic, and then audition Logic drums against it. So it's a pain, but again, this, as we said, this plugin is so fun that and it's so immediate, and you don't have kind of surgical control over the MIDI or anything, but I generally don't feel like I need it with these sliders.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great. I mean, it sounds amazing after just compared to what you do manually without a drum engine like this, and then combine that with that kind of innovative way to generate and adjust the complexity is so cool.
What I like about it is it will generate beats that I wouldn't have thought of. Like I know that I want to kick on the 1 and the 3 and that's it. That's all I know. It'll figure out something more interesting than that with that intact,
Right.
So, I mean, this is your preferred workflow, though.
It is. Yeah. Well, depending on what I'm doing. I mean, this is great when you want really big fat drums, but sometimes you don't want that. So then I probably won't use this.
So can you just walk us through the workflow, your workflow, maybe for those two different scenarios?
Easy Drummer being the first one?
Yeah, you don't have to go through every kind of thing visually, but just even verbally, like what you're making a track that requires big or acoustic drums.
Right.
You how much of the track have you built in Ableton before you then go to the drums typically?
I personally almost always start with drums. Occasionally, like I'll start with some chord sequence or something, but usually I start with drums just because I like to establish the energy of the track from the beginning. And I can always go back and change it if I feel like the drums are too busy or not busy enough or whatever. But generally, I just start with drums. And so if I need acoustic drums, then, Easy Drummer is pretty great for that. I feel like the grooves in Easy Drummer are probably a little bit more realistic sounding just because they've got those little kind of light grace note things happening, which I don't know that Logic Drummer does quite as well. So I mean, I guess in here, I guess the workflow would be sort of like what I showed you before, which is browse for grooves, drag those grooves onto the MIDI track, find some fills, drag the fills, onto the MIDI track and piece together a groove. And the nice thing about this, unlike Logic, is I can go in here and say, okay, you know what, that having two hi-hats here is too much. Let me get rid of that. You know what I mean? I can just drag stuff around, which is very nice. So that would be the, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to ask, you've kind of touched on it, but when, just for your mindset, when do you reach for Easy Drummer versus when do you reach for Logic Drummer?
I would say if I want a straight up rock feel, like not electronic at all, I would probably reach for Easy Drummer. And if I want, I mean, you guys have heard some of the stuff I do, but usually I like really big tracks with a really big kick drum that goes with a ton of synths, and then I go to Logic because I just think the drums sound bigger. That
Interesting. Yeah.
this
Does that
kick
have to
drum.
do with the default room mic settings, or you think that drums kind of something about them inherently sound bigger?
I think, yeah, I think there's something going on here where the kit just sounds more polished to me. This kit. I mean, clearly there's more processing going on their samples, I think.
Yeah.
And then the sound of this kit, the size of that kick drum, that only really works with an electronic track, I feel.
You can kind of tell because it sounds professional from the get-go.
Exactly. Yes.
It sounds kind of finished already.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can show you, but the Easy Drummer stuff, I do quite a bit of processing to it. I mean, I do processing to both, but Easy Drummer, I feel like maybe needs it more. But again, Easy Drummer, I think sounds more realistic too.
Well, it seems like in Easy Drummer, those grooves are all played grooves from people.
I think so.
On like an electronic kit, and then so those are real human grooves.
Right.
Whereas in Logic Drummer, it seems maybe more algorithmic.
Yeah, and you can see the crazy dynamics they have going down here. They've got definitely, definitely there's a feel to this thing, and also not only that, but these grooves you can see they're not locked to the grid. You see that? So there is definitely a kind of a feel to it, and you can kind of humanize Logic drums, but because, like I said, I usually go to that for electronic stuff, I kind of want it locked to the grid.
I wonder if you look at that under a microscope, if in Logic it's also locked to the grid, or if there is that kind of human variation in it.
Yeah, I mean, so Logic has these over here. There's this humanize knob. I think that makes the timing a little looser, and you can up these dynamics, which make the soft to loud range wider.
Okay, interesting. And it starts at like 20%, the human
exactly, yeah. But honestly, because I'm trying to quantize everything, I just generally turn that all the way
down. Cool.
Yeah.
And then again, you can't go into Logic Drummer and then manually adjust like the velocity of certain hits or change any hits.
Really. Well, I guess not with these sounds, but I guess as we've discovered, if I wherever that thing was, wherever that was, or I can't remember what it was, but wherever it was, converting it to MIDI, maybe you can, but then I imagine you're then searching for a different kit,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so good already.
Yeah. And honestly, what I like about Logic Drummer 2 is, we've talked in Discord and on the Wednesday calls a lot about this, but I honestly gravitate towards plugins that have fewer choices. I mean, you saw the number of kit options in Easy Drummer. Yeah. I mean, this isn't that many. And they all sound good. So I like the idea that I'm not going, it does. I'm not falling the trap of like, well, I really should review all 30 kits to make sure I got the best one. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, I hate that. I do that all the time. If there's a
Yeah.
bunch of options, I'm like, I should check every one so that I know which one's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
be
You never
best.
know. It could be some gem I'm missing.
What am I doing with my time?
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
What do you think, Zach? What are we gonna do? I mean, we don't have to do the same thing, but what do you think? What do you want to do in terms of upgrading your setup and workflow? Not to encourage gear acquisition syndrome, but I know you're thinking about something.
Oh, absolutely. Because, well, coming into production fairly late in life, it was like, oh, I got to learn all this other stuff, all these other instruments that I've never really played before, and like drums to me has been the most difficult one because I was like, I don't know the first thing about drums. What's a flam? They say my snare's flamming. What does that mean? Like, and trying to start drums so late, and like, just learning basic beats is one thing, but then trying to get something that sounds like a real drummer, of course, is super challenging. And maybe that's why the genre I kind of navigated towards had really simplistic drum. Synthwave drums are really simple in terms of the patterns. It's all about the gated reverb. So
It seems like you're slowly getting back to that like 80s rock, like shredding on guitar and the drums that to go with it. That you, from what you've told me,
oh yeah,
it's a big inspiration.
that's what I've always loved. And I have, I've definitely realized over time that it is all about the drums to establish that beat. And so I'm always looking for something that can help me with that. And this definitely seems like the thing, to be honest.
Some of it seems quite educational too. Like in Easy Drummer, the different kits. Again, even for me as a drummer for my whole life, like I don't have a good I was never a gear head drummer, so I don't have a good understanding of how all these different kits sound differently. To just be able to click in that little menu and then try them all out immediately, you're like, oh yeah, I know what a 70s drum sounds like.
right.
What
Yeah.
this type of kit sounds like. And then same thing goes with the rooms. I know what a dead room sounds like. I know what a big room sounds like in terms of drums specifically. Obviously, we have reverb presets, but I think just because that's what you do in the studio, but it just takes a whole day to like mic up a drum kit and then
Yeah.
like, switch out drums, and then God forbid you have to do a different room. It's like,
Yeah.
so to be able to just learn all that is sick and Easy Drummer. And then like in Logic Drummer too, like I really like that simplistic view of the beats, like the kick kind of snare, those little circles with the kick and the snare, um, and just like six options of that. I think maybe they were labeled. I don't remember, but I remember thinking that again, even as a drummer, it's just like, oh yeah, these are the beats. These are the basic rhythms that I should kind of understand.
So I'm curious, Cam, as a drummer for decades, where do you see yourself using something like this?
It's funny. As a drummer for decades, I think I found it a bit sacrilegious to get into MIDI drum engines. But I've matured and I don't really care anymore. I don't care. I just want to make good music. I mean, that's my highest priority is to make good music and great songs. So, and this is definitely easier in a lot of different ways. Like I have a drum kit behind me. I have a bunch of mics, but this isn't an ideal room. Like it's anyone who's tried to record and mix drums knows like it's a pain in the butt. Like it's a lot of different microphones. Typically you could do it with less, but and then mixing all those different microphones
Yeah.
before that you have to like check and see that everything is in phase relative to everything else.
Oh,
It's like
it's a nightmare.
this
Yeah.
like matrix of phase switching
Yeah.
like that people don't even talk about, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of time and energy
And then if you're lucky, maybe it'll sound okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm kind of over it. Like kind of like Paul's like, I don't, if I don't have to, why would I want to like mix every individual drama track when I can just, you know, keep moving with my creative process. And
Cam, would you say your mindset shift is because you're not a drummer anymore? You are a songwriter. I mean, you're still a drummer, but you're now also a songwriter. And so the goal is to realize your whole vision rather than play drums.
Possibly that has a little bit to do with it. I mean, when I started recording, I was both a drummer and I feel like I've known for a long time that my ultimate, dreams and goals are just making great songs. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I think you kind of like get more comfortable with who you are and what is really most important to you, and then are able to drop some stuff that's just you don't even realize it's just subconscious that is just like mental baggage. Like there was no reason I needed to like wait this long to check out these tools, which are clearly amazing and would help me songwrite.
Yeah.
But I just, as a drummer, that I had it in the back of my head. I was like, oh, I'll just get really good at recording acoustic drums. That's a better investment on my time because then it's organic and it's my own sound and it just sounds cool to do. And I still
Yeah.
feel that to many degrees. Like if I was to use any of these plugins, I mean, honestly, still like my ideal is to still use
Hmm.
acoustic drums. Um, I just think, also my whole process has changed. Like I songwrite, and so when I'm songwriting, I need to get it helps, like you said, Paul, to just get some good sounding drums in there from the beginning. Um, and I could sort of do that now, but it just doesn't sound that nearly as good for me. Just quick, like while I'm in the songwriting process, to quickly record some drums. It's like I'm not always in that setup. That's like 11 mics. I have to be like my amp, my audio interface has to be all routed correctly, and
Hmm.
then again, you have to like fade switch. It's like that completely takes you out of the creative
Yep.
flow. So
Yep.
to have something like this as a song to help you get the rhythms down while you're songwriting is I just don't think you could do it without the acoustic drums.
Right.
So if, ideally I'm at a place now where I don't want to do everything myself. I want to songwrite, I want to create good demos, and I would love to go into a recording studio and record with a good drummer in a good space with a good engineer. Like who wouldn't want to do that? That just sounds awesome. Um and so that's what I would love to do, but the further you can get something in really minimal moves, you might as well. I mean,
Yeah.
probably realistically speaking, if I was to go down this route, which I probably will, and make a bunch of demos with Easy Drummer or Logic Drummer, I would imagine a lot of the times that we would just keep those drums fully, if not, you know, only. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I would love to like layer, that's obviously another really common thing that people do. You
Yep.
layer acoustic kits and supplement them with um samples to get the kick to sound be more full and in your face to make the snare sound really good. It's really hard to get a really good snare sound. Uh,
Yes.
so, I think layering is awesome. I don't know. I've rambled quite a bit off of your original question, but
No, it's interesting stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely taken the approach of like whatever it takes to realize the big picture vision that's in my head, to come up with a recording that I can play for myself or others. Whatever steps take me that are taken to get there, it's all good. Hopefully, fewer steps is better, But the goal is to create that recording that I can play.
yeah.
And
I mean, there's a fair bit of ego that goes into music creating sometimes, and sometimes you have to realize what you're really serving. Like, are you serving your ultimate goal of creating a good song, or are you, is there a fair portion of your brain that's going, are people going to judge me for using this plugin or doing it this way? You can't
yeah,
have big portions of your brain
yeah,
thinking about that shit, and so it's
yep,
it's hard, but you have to constantly be ego trimming, I think, in music.
yeah.
Um,
That's so
there's,
true. So true. Yeah. And also, I mean, honestly, I was wondering, but when I started using these plugins that are like analyzing the audio and whatnot, it's like, am I cheating? Am I like betraying all the engineering stuff that I learned about for all these years? And
yeah.
I was like, you know what? The goal is not to be an engineer. The goal is to produce a song, you know?
The goal is not to make the most people on gearsluts.com like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like the new software might feel like magic, but also when the first compressor was released, that was also magic to pretty much
Right.
everyone. And the
Cheating, yeah.
knobs, how many people understood them, you know, Could you build
Anything
your
that
own
makes it
compressor
easier.
with a pile of transistors? Probably not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also just because the tools are making things hopefully easier, ultimately we still have to use our ears and our taste. We're still making a ton of creative decisions, just not getting lost in the weeds about, boosting one particular frequency a couple dB or whatever, you know.
Yep.
It's really interesting. It seems like in any craft, when there's something that's introduced that makes the work easier, there's all this judgment.
Yeah.
You always think, like in any craft, if something makes it easier, you're like, oh, I'm like doing something wrong.
Yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
the other craftsmen are gonna make fun of
Yeah.
me
That's
because I'm
that's
like,
cheat that's cheating.
yeah, it's weird. Like I don't know what that is. Is that like a fetish about like work culture in America or in the world in general? I don't know what that is.
Yeah. People are purists about interesting things, right?
Yeah, like it should be hard. Did you post that video about taste, Cam? Was that yours?
I don't know. What was
It
it
was
about?
that producer, that Phineas, that does his
Oh yeah,
sister,
Oh, I
Bailey.
didn't watch that.
and it was a really short clip, and he was just talking about how it's your taste that matters more than anything. Like there's no right or
Oh yeah.
wrong. If someone says, "Oh, the way you compress that vocal, it's really tinny," and you're like, "No, that's exactly what I wanted. I did that on purpose."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
having
I love
that.
the way he put it. He said like that's your greatest defense too, because then nobody can tear you down. Like they'll be like, you can't do it that way, or that's weird, or that's not how you're supposed to compress a kick. And then you just go, well, I liked it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Uh,
it.
I thought it
yeah.
sounded good. I liked
And
it.
I think that
That's
defines
why
the
I did it.
artist. You know what you
Yeah.
like.
In a previous life, I used to work in film editing for TV commercials, and back then the video equipment was like $100,000 per edit bay. That for nonlinear editing. This is the early days of Avid, and my boss used to always say to me, people are not coming to us because we have the equipment. They're coming to us for a point of view. And I always remembered that.
Mm,
Like it's not the equipment, it's what you do with it, right?
mm, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we forget that, and it's easy to devalue ourselves and in awe of some shiny, expensive equipment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in, like, sometimes those default values are very confining, especially in things like a photo editor where you're like, hey, there's an auto button and it kind of like balances all your levels to be
Yep.
within some range. And you're like, oh,
Yep.
it's perfect now. That's auto, but it's not artistic at all, like deciding where those things go and how you want them to look is the artistry.
Yeah. Well, this touches upon that big discussion we had a week or two ago on Discord about AI, right? So that's great if it can spit out a piece of music or video or photograph or whatever, but where's the joy in it, right? Where's the story? Where's the humanity behind it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
it is. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
oh, I would just say that like the work is not necessarily the only part. It's the destination is not all of it. It's the journey getting there too, right?
Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
the humans behind it.
Yeah.
You love it's all this that subtle stuff, like oh, this guy posted a video about his process in creating this output, uh,
Right.
or there's some image, an album image, or
Right.
you can hear the imperfections in the recording. Like that's why we love art is because we are seeing humans create something, not because of some absolute value of the final.
Yeah. I mean, context matters, right?
Yeah.
It's like how you experience the art. Where did it come from? What's the story behind it, right? What was the medium or the media used to create it, right? It's like we care about these things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's synonymous with a lot of advice that you get from artists too, where they just say be yourself, right? That's really common advice, just
Yeah.
in general in life, and it's really confusing advice. I've been at different points in my life really confused by that advice because it's like be
Yeah.
yourself, and I'm like, okay, what? How do I do that? What does that mean? Like, what's the first
Yeah.
step here? I don't really understand what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Or similarly, I think I would hear people say, well, you just have to have something to say. And that would always freak me out. Like, oh shit, do I have anything to say?
But
What if I don't have
Yeah.
anything to say?
I don't have anything serious to say.
Yeah.
I just want to talk.
Yeah.
it's really weird. I mean, it goes so hand in hand with like just self-confidence. It's like, no, just what you as you are is great. You don't have
Right.
to do anything. It's just
There's
kind of this,
intrinsic value with just who you are. Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of just subtly like just being okay with every single part of you. And in art, it's like I don't know. Again, it's weird, but it's like just tapping into that realness. It's like the realer you can make something and just
Yeah.
kind of just fall, just follow, just ride the edge of your thoughts.
Yeah.
Anything that pops in your head that you find interesting is
Yeah.
really authentic and that's a really real human experience. And if you can kind of harvest that into art, then people will really appreciate that and they'll feel the humanness.
Yeah. I have to say this, that I have to wonder if the two of you knew that this uh, Portland Music Producers Group was going to become the thriving community, the vibrant community that it is, because and I think it's the tone that you guys set, but I feel like one of the foundations of it is everyone is good the way they are. Come however you want, and make music however you want. It's all good, and I love that.
Yeah, it's thank you. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I
that's
don't
great.
know how much. I mean, we've definitely thought about stuff purposely, but yeah, some of that just happens subconsciously of just wanting to be in a space where you're safe and you're kind of removing as much ego as possible. And like,
Yeah,
look, we just, everyone has all these different goals, they different skill levels, different
yeah,
genres, different ages, like a lot of differences. But the
yeah,
common thread is that yeah, we want to make music and we want to help each other do that. And recognizing that we're not competing, so we might as well just share
yeah,
each other as much as possible. And
yeah,
we're going to grow. The what is it? The tide raises. Many ships raise with the tide or whatever.
yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like it's like we all want to make music. There's a understanding that sometimes it's not easy, and we can support each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're
I
pretty
don't
vulnerable.
think.
Like
Yeah.
Zach and I get into the mental struggles of it all the time because there are
Yeah.
you're kidding yourself if there's not mental struggles in artistry and music creation.
Well,
Right.
and I think that's where we started. Is we didn't start off with, hey, let's make a community. It was like I I met Cam through this some Ableton group that he had started, and he's like, hey, we're doing this music challenge, and I was like, man, maybe I'll join. And it was like, right, what was it, like 5 songs in 5 weeks or
7 songs, 5 weeks. Each
seven?
week is a different step of the
Oh yeah,
process.
that's right. 7 songs, 5 weeks. So
Uh-huh.
that was the beginning of Cam and my relationship. Was like, hey, do this crazy songwriting jam with me, and I was like, that is crazy, but I did it.
Wow.
And
Nailed it.
then,
Zach did
after
the best
that,
out of anybody.
That's awesome.
after that, we kept in touch and did some smaller stuff, and we would just every time we talked, it was like, I wish there was just a community of like songwriters and like trying to find one. There nothing existed, and so we kind of
Yeah.
slowly just pieced together like what would we want it to be if it did exist, and slowly it came together. It took a while.
Yeah, I was wondering what it was like in the beginning because I feel like there are 2 or 3 new people every single week, which is amazing.
It started off slow, and I think right when we started it off, I had kind of a big like life event, and so then I was kind of gone, and Cam was kind of just like soloing these
Uh-huh.
meetings for a
Pushing it forward. I
while.
was like hustling it, pushing it forward.
So yeah,
And
it
then
was
Zach came back, thank God, which was,
yeah,
it's a big help to have Zach because there's so many things that, one of us will have a good idea, but it really helps to have someone else who you trust and
Yeah.
you respect their opinion. And
Was it just a handful of people for a while?
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
one of the first people was Richard. He hopped in like the first or second Wednesday video call.
Yeah. Awesome.
But really the input has been from Meetup and Craigslist really only, other than word of mouth.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I posted it on Meetup.
Uh-huh.
Got a
That's
few
how I found it.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the more events we post on Meetup, the more it kind of advertises it to more and more people. So
Gotcha.
Meetup's probably the best way to get that has gotten people in the group, the most people.
Is the Discord link on Meetup? Is that how people are just randomly popping into the Discord? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Discord link's available through Meetup and also through the Craigslist posts.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just kind of periodically renew the Craigslist posts that I have about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Ah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I'm not a super outgoing person, but I'm really pleased that I one day thought, it'd be really nice to find a community to be a part of so I can talk to other people about music because, as much as I love my friends and family, they don't care about Ableton Live and plugins.
I know. Yeah.
Well, I'm so appreciative of you, Paul, and so happy to have you because you're such a active and valuable member of the community, and you have such a great attitude and like personality wise combined with such great experience.
Thanks.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I feel like I'm getting so much out of it that whatever I can give, the better,
That's great because you're like the ideal member. We need like 20 more Pauls.
Yeah, that should be like our personality archetype that we like.
Careful what you ask for. That's all.
Clones.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. I enjoy it so much.